Hey everyone, today I've got a general gameplay tips and tricks video for you, and most of the things that I'm about to show you apply to both PvE and PvP, although some of them are obviously going to be more efficient in either one or the other. And to begin, I want to teach players on how to use cover in this game, because it is one of the most fundamental things about it, and I still see a lot of players using it the wrong way, I guess, and always sticking to cover like a piece of chewing gum, which in many cases just isn't the best thing to do. It's not always bad, it's just not always good either. For example, let's take a look at a normal height, full body cover piece. The one where your agent can just stand up, not have to crouch, and just peek out from either the left or the right side. When your agent pops out, when you're ADSing so to speak, a big chunk of his body and his head is automatically always exposed. Which means that yeah, you're going to be able to deal damage, but you're also going to take a lot of damage from either NPCs or in PvP from other players. However, watch what happens if I just don't sit in cover, if I just, stand next to it but don't actually use the cover system, and if I just take a few steps back and kinda zero in a little bit towards the edge of the cover. On my screen, I can still see the other player pretty clearly, and I can shoot him as well, I can still damage him. But if I do it the right way, he will not be able to see as much of my body as before. And if I go all the way to the extreme, if I really put my crosshair right at the edge, and if I really get my character right at the edge of the cover piece, you'll actually disappear completely from the other player's vision. And yet, you can still just as easily damage the other player. Now, this is obviously going to give you a pretty big advantage in PvP for obvious reasons. I mean, you can damage somebody and he cannot damage you back, and you can even use this in combination with the one-shot sniper build that I showcased yesterday to kill players instantly without them being able to shoot you back. But besides PvP, it also has pretty huge advantages in PvE, because you can do the same thing to NPCs, the random mobs. For example, to heavies, who are usually quite slow but then hit really, really hard. You can kind of stand next to the edge of a cover piece and they will not be able to shoot you because they will not be able to see you, because technically you're still behind the cover. So, is using cover always bad? No, definitely not. There are definitely situations where using cover can be really good. For example, if you have to switch out an armor plate, because if you switch out an armor plate, then you'll actually be out there in the open, just standing there waiting to be killed for about 2 to 3 seconds. It takes 2 seconds to use an armor plate, but it usually takes a little bit longer because the animation has to keep going and that kind of stuff. And that's enough time to get killed. However, if before you activate the armor plate, you quickly latch onto a low piece of cover, your agent will essentially crouch during the animation, which means that in many cases the NPCs and even the other players will not be able to hit you. It's pretty straightforward, but I still see way too many players just pop that armor plate right in the open and then obviously they get killed. If you're sitting behind cover, what other players will 100% do though is drop a grenade at that piece of cover. And grenades are a little bit tricky in the Division 2, I guess, because they're a lot different from the way that they worked in the Division 1. And I still see that a lot of players have trouble properly throwing the grenade. So I thought I would just talk about how the throwing animation for the grenades and also for the skills work in this game. Basically, when you aim your grenade, it will give you an arc of where the grenade will go, and then also an area of where it will land and do damage. That's the same as in the Division 1. But in Division 2, if you press that grenade throw button, it takes quite a while for the agent to actually do the animation and throw the grenade out. So you would think that you would have to throw it a little bit before you reach the destination where you want it to go. Otherwise, you're gonna overshoot or miss, or you're not as fast as you could have been. The thing is though, is that you shouldn't do this, because even though it takes a while for the grenade to leave the hand and then go up in the air, it actually always follows the exact path, the exact arc that the UI shows the same second that you press the throw button in the game. Even if your agent on the screen has moved away from the location by, I don't know, a couple meters because you threw the grenade while you were moving, it will still spawn in the mid-air location of where you press the grenade and follow the exact arc that it showed you the very second that you pressed that grenade button. And again, it can look a little bit weird on the screen because your hand is going one way and then the grenade is spawning somewhere else and then going through the air. But it's actually pretty convenient, because that means that if you press the button the moment that you see an opening to throw your grenade, that's the exact trajectory that the grenade will go. Once you get used to this, it will be a lot more easy to glide out and then back into cover to quickly throw a grenade without having the grenade hit the wall because you pressed it a little bit too early, which is something that happened to me a lot when I just started playing. And the same works for the skills. The skills also follow that same arc. Grenades and skills basically work the same. Additionally, for the players with grenade builds, and also for everybody else, you can actually get twice the amount of grenades per restock. So for the DZ, instead of 7 grenades, you would have 14. And in skirmish, you wouldn't have 2 grenades, but you would have 4. Now, how do you do this? Well, it's very simple. All you have to do is unlock any of the special grenades in any of the specialization skill trees. And well done, you now have twice the grenades. Many players don't know this, but it doesn't matter whether you're using the special grenade or the default concussion one. Once you run out of your grenades, you can always go back in your inventory and just select the other grenade that belongs to the specialization you're now playing. And then you also have 7 of those grenades available. The only thing is that you cannot do this in combat, so it's useful to do it in between fights. But let's be honest, even in conflict, it's very easy to go out of combat because of the wave spawning system. So that's basically 2 extra free grenades per life, pretty much. But yeah, that's all I gotta say on grenades. So now I want to talk a little bit about the skills. Now the skill cooldowns in the Division 2 are very lengthy. Sometimes they can be up to 4 minutes. And sure, you can reduce this by speccing into cooldown reduction. But did you know that by manually deactivating your skills, you will put them on only half of the original cooldown, no matter how much you used that skill, how much charges it had when you deactivated it, or how long it had been active. If you have a healing drone, for example, and it's been healing you the whole time and it's just about to run out, if you then manually destroy it instead of letting it destroy itself, it will still go on half the cooldown than it originally would have been. So if you get in the habit of just doing this when skills are about to run out, which is a little bit easier on skills with a long cooldown or a long duration, and a little bit harder on skills with a short duration and a short cooldown. But if you get in the habit of doing this, you can basically use your skills twice as often. And also you can see that on my skill cooldowns, I can see the exact time that it takes for my skills to be back, for them to be back off cooldown. But this feature isn't actually enabled by default. If you want to have this as well, you got to go into your menu settings, then go to the gameplay tab and then enable show numeric skill cooldown timer. And with this, you will always see the exact cooldown of your skills. Although if you have a skill with multiple charges, like for example, the cam launcher healing mod, the text can actually overlap with the charges, which then looks quite confusing. You can't always quite read it, but it's still better to have than nothing. Now here's a tip for the solo players, but it still applies to players in a group as well. It's just very useful for the solo players. You can actually use the Revive Hive skill, which is this thing, which it's basically like the new support station. And this is supposed to automatically revive teammates that get downed. But you can actually also use this as your second life, because if you still have it ready to go off cooldown and you get downed, the skill will automatically pop out and revive you, even if you're playing in a group. Now this doesn't work in the Dark Zone or in the conflict game modes, because I guess it would mess up the PvP quite a lot. But it can be quite useful in the PvE content and in the open world. Again, especially if you play solo. And you can also use a medkit as soon as you get revived, because when you get revived by this thing, you usually don't have a lot of armor, so you kind of want to medkit as fast as possible, but sometimes you're in the open, so how are you going to go about this? Well, don't worry, you can always medkit the moment that you get revived. Because the moment that you get revived, you will be immune to damage for just a few seconds. So you're always able to pop that medkit, which is an important thing to keep in mind. It can be the difference between living or dying. The cam launcher healing mod is also probably the best healing skill in the game. Also very good for solo players because it has a very low cooldown. It cannot be shot down by NPCs or other players like a Seeker Mine or Drone. And it has multiple charges and an instant cast, which allows you to drop it on the floor without having to aim it. Which then in turn allows you to keep running or keep shooting or do whatever. Something I didn't know about this skill though, when I just started playing, is that the multiple charges that it has can actually stack with each other. So if you're low on armor, you can actually spam a few of these things in a row behind cover to heal up faster without having to waste a medkit. And that can actually be very valuable. I also wanted to quickly look at the shields. All the different shield mods in the game also seem to have some sort of passive healing component to them. They always heal a little bit over time. And just like with players, the shield can also be healed up using healing skills. So if you think about it, you could make a tank build for PvE with the shield, and then have a healer heal it up behind you, healing both the player and the shield at the same time. Although for PvP, you know, it would be cool to have something like that, but it doesn't really work because, of course, you can still just one-shot the shield player, so that idea kind of goes out of the window. Another thing to keep in mind is that while you're on fire, if you're burning, you can still reload your weapon and also hipfire your gun. A lot of players didn't seem to notice because you cannot aim down sights anymore when you're on fire. It just doesn't work. And shooting and reloading also wasn't possible in the Division 1. But yeah, in the Division 2, you can. The more you know, right? And then to finish it up, I have 2 more UI tips for you. The first one is to go into gameplay settings and set the move around corner speed from slow to fast. This will allow you to move around the edge of corners faster, and it can be useful in both PvE and also in PvP. It might not always be useful, but it might save your life once a day or something. And then you can also go into your inventory and go to the options and enable the grid layout, which will then give you 2 rows of gear instead of just 1, and might make it easier to browse through your inventory and your stash. I really like it, I'm using it myself. The only thing with it though is that you cannot see your item's gear score at a glance, but at the end game, all your items are going to be max gear score anyway, so that's really a non-issue. Maybe if you're leveling up, you don't want to get the grid view, but at the end game, you definitely do. And that's going to wrap it up for this video. It was a little bit messy, a little bit all over the place, just couple tips from all kinds of places. Let me know if you enjoyed this style video or not, if it was helpful at all. It definitely would have helped me out if I just started playing, because there are a lot of things on this list that I wouldn't have known about. So yeah, give me some feedback. As always, I'll see you guys later, or like they say in the Netherlands, zie je later.